Restarted. Please call roll.
Garza.
Here.
Conklin.
Here.
Goss. Here. Fast.
Here.
Richardson.
Yes.
Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item, please.
We have a prayer.
Mr. Peterson, would you like to lead us?
Good morning. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly and most gracious Father, we thank it as a tremendous privilege to come before you and to lead and lift up the council, lift up every department. And Father, we just thank you for the anointing of the Holy Spirit, Father, to lead us and guide us and show us and tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. And Father, I just pray blessings over this city. I thank you, Lord God, we live in a good city, a blessed city. But Father God, there's things that need to be changed and modified and upgraded. And Father, I just thank you for the wisdom, but not only with the wisdom, but the understanding of it. Be able to put it into action, into practice. And Father, I just thank you that as we go through this year, that things are going to be better, look better, feel better. And Father, we just thank you the council's going to be able to move.
J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas this holiday called Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property value, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now therefore I, John Richardson, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim April 28th, 2023 as Arbor Day in the City of Hutchinson, and urge all citizens to celebrate Arbor Day and to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. And further, I urge all citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Do you have anything to say on this?
I do.
All right, please step up.
Good morning, Justin Combs, Director of Parks and Facilities. We'll be celebrating Arbor Day like we have in the past with fourth graders from Plum Creek Elementary School. We'll bring them all out to Orchard Park to plant some trees. I don't have all the details figured out yet as far as time and how many trees, those sorts of things. Well, I will get that information out when we have those details worked out. All the trees are provided by the tree board through the Trees for Forever Fund. On a quick side note, something that was very interesting, we've been doing this tree planting project for a number of years. Our first or second group of doing this are now seniors in high school. Earlier this year, actually in 2022, we had a senior from Bueller High School reach out, and they wanted to do their passion project, which is a project they all have to do on tree planting because of the experience that she had as a fourth grader at Plum Creek. So that was kind of nice to see it kind of come full circle. That something we did to a fourth grader, and an experience that fourth grader got has stuck around all the way through their senior year. So again, thank you for the proclamation, and we'll get those details out. I would encourage anyone to come out and watch. It's fun watching 60 fourth graders plant a bunch of trees. So
Justin, how big is the 10-year-old tree now?
I don't remember which one she planted. We talked about it a little bit, but they've grown. I mean, they're still not huge, but so not quite providing a lot of shade yet.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next item, please.
Item 4B, a proclamation for Crime Victims' Rights Week.
We're supposed to have someone join me. Oh, there we go. Good morning, sir. Go ahead and read this. Whereas the term victim is more than just a label and has legal standing and protections that go along with it, and whereas Crime Victims' Rights Acts passed here in Kansas and at the federal level guarantee victims the right to meaningfully participate and use their voice in the criminal justice process, and victim service providers, advocates, law enforcement officers, attorneys, and other allied professionals can help survivors find their justice by enforcing these rights. And whereas the right to provide an impact statement ensures that victims' voices are considered in court during the sentencing and, when applicable, restitution processes. And whereas including and elevating the voices of survivors makes certain they are heard and seen and creates a path to forging and sustaining community trust, and engaging survivors creates responses and services that are credible, meaningful, and centered on individual needs. And whereas survivors' lived experience can serve as a catalyst for implementing innovative programs, shifting existing programs in new directions, and changing policies or practices that prevent survivors from accessing services or pursuing justice. Whereas National Crime Victims' Rights Week, April 23rd through 29th, 2023, provides an opportunity to recommit to listening to crime survivors in every space where decisions are made that could impact them, and the Reno County District Attorney's Office is hereby dedicated to amplifying the voices of survivors and creating an environment where survivors have the confidence that they will be heard, believed, and supported. Now, therefore, I, John Richardson, as the mayor of City of Hutchinson, Kansas, I do hereby proclaim the week of April 23rd through 29th, 2023, as City of Hutchinson Crime Victims' Rights Week, and reaffirm this City of Hutchinson's commitment to creating a victim service and criminal justice response that assists all victims of crime during Crime Victims' Rights Week and throughout the year, and expressing our sincere gratitude and appreciation for those community members, victim service providers, and criminal justice professionals who are committed to improving our response to all victims of crime so that they may find relevant assistance, support, justice, and peace. Present this to you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, do you have a few words you want to say? All right.
I'm a lawyer, of course. Good morning. My name is Tom Stanton. I'm the District Attorney in Reno County. Thank you for taking your time here today to recognize Crime Victims Week. Victims run in your community through my office and through your city attorney's office. We have batteries all the way up to homicides where victims are created. And it's important that those victims have a voice and that we listen to that voice. And we do that all year round, but this week we will be, next week we will be doing that on a more concentrated basis. I do want to invite you all next Thursday, April 27th at 6:30 at the South Hutchinson Community Center. We will be having our candlelight ceremony. That ceremony honors victims of homicide and also surviving victims and family members who are victims, because when you take someone's family member, you make them a victim as well. And so we have this every year, and victims and survivors are asked to come forward or have the opportunity to come forward and light a candle in memory of their lost one, or in memory of just the trauma that they have gone through. So appreciate very much your support, and we will, in the District Attorney's Office, continue to seek justice for all of these victims. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next item, please.
Item 4C, a proclamation for the Founders Neighborhood.
Mr. O'Neill and Mr. Peterson, would you like to join me up here? Good morning. Whereas the neighborhood east of downtown between the railroad right-of-way south of 3rd Avenue and the railroad right-of-way south of Avenue C is among the oldest and most historically significant in Hutchinson. And whereas the area is home to George Pyle Park and 3 privately owned parks, the Hutchinson Post Office, City Hall, HMS 7, the Reno County Museum, the Zone, and several churches. And whereas residents had their first meeting to discuss neighborhood issues and identify priorities on September 20th, 2022, and continue to meet on a regular basis. And whereas during an October 25th, 2022 meeting, residents determined the extent of their neighborhood as between Walnut Street and the Ken Kennedy Freeway, from the railroad right-of-way south of 3rd Avenue to the railroad right-of-way south of Avenue C. And whereas residents voted at a meeting on January 24th, 2023, to name the neighborhood the Founders Neighborhood in honor of its place in Hutchinson's history. Now, therefore, I, John Richardson, Mayor of the City of Hutchinson, Kansas, do hereby proclaim the neighborhood between Walnut Street and the Ken Kennedy Freeway, from the railroad right-of-way south of 3rd Avenue to the railroad right-of-way south of Avenue C, as the Founders Neighborhood. Gentlemen. Give this to you. Do you want to say a few words?
Okay.
On behalf of the Founders Neighborhood?
You can't refuse an opportunity, I guess. we have a lot of things to be thankful for. It's been a long time coming. And, it's been thank God for the people that's been involved in it. And I appreciate Steve Garza so much because he's really helped us to implement, get it started, motivate. But not only that, but Adam and Tony, we just thank them for all the wisdom that they had. And without the people coming together, where would we be, But it's finally come to the end, and the proclamation looks really, really good. And so we're excited, and this is just the beginning of something greater. So, thank you all.
Hello, I'm Mike O'Neill, Hutchinson resident basically for life. We would like to thank Julie Thompson for designing our street signs. We'd also like to thank I'm sorry, gotta check my notes, can't remember what I want to say. There it is. Grace Christian Church, sorry, I'm gonna mess that one up, for providing the zone for us to have our meetings in. I also would like to thank Steve Garza for being a driving force behind us, and to thank Adam for all of his help with what we've got done. We're looking forward to getting more things done and be seeing you more in the future. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 5, oral communications from the audience.
It's the portion of the meeting where we open up the podium for audience participation for items not on the agenda. If you do have something to say, please come up, state your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes. All right, we'll move on to the next item, please.
Item 6, consent agenda.
Do we have any questions or comments on the consent agenda from the council? If not, I would entertain.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Is this the consent agenda, part of the consent agenda?
It is part of it, yes.
Okay. I have some procedural questions about this part of the consent agenda. I'm not sure if it would be for Paul or for Kendall. My main question is that this is a lot of information, and this isn't like me saying that we're not up for the task or anything like that. This is more of an issue for transparency to the public. This is a lot of information to be given on a Thursday and then vote on a Tuesday. And I'm not saying we're trying to hide anything or accuse anybody of anything at all like that. My concern simply is that the public doesn't have a whole lot of time to read and digest some of this information. So I was wondering if there was a specific purpose that we did it this way, or if there was maybe a different way to do things.
I guess I'm a little uncertain of which portion. Are you talking about the financial portion?
The appropriation.
The appropriations part. Like if things could go to a first read and a second read, giving people more time to read them, or if there was a particular reason that we did it the way that we're doing it now.
It's to pay bills, but I maybe let Angela speak to it a little bit more directly.
It's not uncommon to do it this way. I understand with the size of the city of Hutchinson, it is a lot of information. We do an annual resolution, or I believe it's a resolution, where you approve that we can pay things first and then you can review them later. So those are things that have already been paid.
Okay.
I would have to put some thought in it on how to change that and maybe discuss with Paul if there are other options. I'm not sure.
Let me also tell you from past history, and it
Yes,
predates me, okay? The city council used to meet every week. And they did have those first and second readings. And the end result of that is you're in a constant state of putting an agenda together with the first and second readings. And it really didn't accomplish anything. And I understand the financial part, quite a bit to look at. Quite frankly, I don't look at it. I have a finance director, so I don't have to look at it. But it is a problem to try and get those packets out earlier because the city staff can't get it together.
and it delays matters. So we like to get it out as much as we can, and pretty much financial reports are administerial anyway, because we do annual audits. So if there's a problem, it's discovered in a hurry, and we toe the line very much so when it comes to finances.
Right. And so this is, just to be clear, we're voting on things that have already been paid for. So these aren't things that have an opportunity for public input per se, or that we would have an option to change or amend, correct?
Correct. They're going to be paying for things we've already purchased. There wouldn't be much chance to go back on that, and that's why we have procedures up front going into the purchasing procedures. We have certain approval thresholds where department directors, myself, or Kendall would need to approve before we even make the purchase. We have procedures on how to review invoices, on levels department heads need to approve, levels I need to approve, before it even makes it into that packet. And we're reviewing actual invoices, we're verifying we have the goods. So I feel like we have the proper procedures in place to make sure we're not paying things that we shouldn't be. So it is more for transparency. Some governments will put those lists on the website or have interactive tools, transparency tools, where the public can dig into those kind of things with varying degrees of success. So it is really just for transparency and not necessarily for your approval to purchase or pay for something.
Okay. Thank you. That answers my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
And you'll get into a lot more of that because you haven't seen the budgeting process yet.
Oh, I know.
And so when that comes, I think you can look at these other faces down here. You'll understand.
The coffee pot will be working, I promise you. Any other questions or comments on the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Next item, please.
Did I call
You forgot me.
Stacy? I'm sorry, Goss.
Yes.
I apologize. Item 7A, consider ordinance amending school zone speed limit for Prairie Hills Middle School.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. Council, it's just a minor amendment to our provision on the school zones. There was a request for Prairie Hills Middle School to have theirs adjusted to a different time, and we always accommodate the schools and give them what they ask for. And so that's why you see that amendment, and I'd ask you to approve it.
Any questions for Mr. Brown?
Has there been, do you think that this would trigger any other requests for sign changes? As we know right now, has there been any?
I actually
drop-off or
asked
changes?
on the other grade schools for the Buick School District before I did the ordinance to see if they wanted those adjusted, and they did not.
And we haven't been contacted by Hutch or anybody else?
No. And we have been in the past. The last change we made before this had to do with some of the schools were serving breakfast to the students, so they were arriving earlier. So we expanded the school zone times to cover when they would arrive and depart from the school. And that's the last ones we've had.
I move to approve the ordinance amending section 23-202 of chapter 23 of the Code of the City of Hutchinson regarding school zone speed limits and authorize the mayor to sign.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 7B, consider ordinance authorizing general obligation bonds for the East Side Drainage Bridge replacements and removal.
Angela Richard, Director of Finance. On March 7th, City Council awarded the bid to replace the Pleasant and Hoagland ESD bridges and remove the second over ESD bridge. This was originally budgeted in the 2022 budget for $1.2 million. The bid was awarded to Claver Construction for just over $1,046,000. The IRS regulations state that before we can spend money, which we intend to bond, and reimburse ourselves for, we must pass an ordinance. So the ordinance attached has it for the amount of $1,105,000, and this will allow for a small contingency and then bonding costs. If bonding costs come back lower, we will bond the actual amount needed. This will be bonded with future projects later this year. I'm still working on the timing of that. So I would ask that City Council approve the ordinance as stated. Are there any questions?
Any questions from council or clarifications needed?
I got a question. You just said, and I hear you saying this all the time on different meetings, that you're waiting to bond it with other things. The reason we do that so we can get a better rate? Is that why we wait to bond it with other stuff?
It's not so much the rate, it's the actual bonding cost.
Okay.
Because the way that Piper Sandler bills us is, like if our bonds are between $1 and $2 million, it's this cost, or 2 to 5, it's
see.
this cost. And it lowers it the higher you go, and also like your state filing fee, you're gonna have that no matter how much you bond. So the more we can consolidate, the better it is financially for us.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve an ordinance authorizing the issuance of general obligation bonds of the city of Hutchinson, Kansas to pay the cost of certain improvements, all pursuant to Charter Ordinance number 50 of the city, and authorize the mayor to sign.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? If not, please call roll.
Garza.
Yes.
Conklin.
Yes.
Goss.
Yes.
Fast.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8A, consider bids for sanitary sewer main improvements.
Good morning, council. The city, there's a section of sanitary sewer line that comes out of the wastewater treatment facility and runs across a field owned by Mr. Pankratz. The line was noted to be damaged by farm equipment going over top of it, and the cattle, it's a cattle pasture, so the cattle walked over it and caused some damage. That the project was included in the 2020 CIP and is to replace approximately 1,720 feet of the 42-inch diameter pipe. It is going to be upsized to 48-inch pipe. There's some things in the new plans to help protect the pipe from future damage from equipment and cattle. The project was given to BG Consultants on February 16th of 2021 for design, and the bids came in. Of course, there's been a couple years of design here, but they came in a little bit higher than the engineer's estimate. I talked with Mr. Clinton, and he was comfortable with moving with the base bid. The add alternate was just some televising of some existing line that we were going to leave anyways and clean, so our crews could go back and actually do that at a later date. We just thought they would see if the bids came in favorable to go ahead and approve that. So with that, it is recommended that the city council approve the bid for a total of $1,992,548 and authorize the mayor to sign a contract with Apex Shears.
Thank you. The engineer's estimate was back from 2020.
Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions or comments for?
Yeah, Jeff, that we had a damage on 17th, something similar to that. A car hit our pipe, correct?
Yes.
On this one here, we had a tractor run over it.
Well, it's in a field.
Okay.
It goes across his pasture.
I see.
And so, yeah, this was all a little bit before me, so I'm trying to recall information for this project, but I don't know what the agreement was. I know that he was allowed to still farm over top of the pipe, so I don't know how it got to the point, and
Right.
it was still to be maintained for the cattle use as well. Now we'll be putting up barbed wire fence to keep everything off the top of it, and building a concrete pad for the tractor to transverse.
Right. Well, we going to replace this pipe anyway, or we have to do it because
No, there's a bunch of liner failures. The concrete pipe itself is starting to fail. It's getting soft, and that's why the cattle and tractor were damaging it. It wasn't.
Okay. Okay. Reason I'm asking, I'm just saying if he damaged it, but we were gonna replace it and the pipe was in poor condition anyway, correct? All right.
Any
I
other questions?
I have a question. Was there anything else favorable about the bid besides it being the lowest bid? Like, was there anything that made it particularly, like, I don't know, the one we went with, besides just the dollars?
No, it's,
Because they're all doing the exact same work. It's so,
right.
what are some of the variables that, without going into too much detail, because I know there's different, they've all got different costs, but like, it seems like we do a lot of business with APAC, so it seems like they're doing something like a lot cheaper than everybody else. Is that just like how they operate?
No, so actually, APAC this year has come in and swept quite a few projects up. Typically, APAC Utilities is pretty competitive. They like to bring their guys back home, and so, because most of their employees live in Hutch. So when there is a project in Hutch, they tend to be pretty competitive so that their guys have a chance to go home every night instead of being out on the road. So that's them taking the two utility projects is pretty common. They also landed another project. I don't remember which one, but yeah, they past couple years they've lost on some of the asphalt work and construction work, and then this year they're coming a little bit more aggressive. So it's just a matter of the way
Okay.
construction schedules are falling, I think.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I think in the past, a lot of these bids vary so much because of mobilization costs. Getting all this heavy equipment where it needs to be.
They're all coming from different places out of state, that sort of thing.
Or what their schedule looks like. If they're really busy,
Yeah.
they won't go very low if they've got plenty of work to do. If there aren't any more questions or comments, I'd entertain a motion on this.
I'll move, motion to approve the bid from APAC Kansas in the amount of $1,992,548 and authorize the mayor to sign the contract.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments before we move forward? All right. Please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes, thank you. Next item, please.
Item 8B, consider ARPA Small Business Grant Award recommendations.
Angela Richard, Director of Finance. I'm here to present the ARPA Small Business Grant Award recommendations. Okay, I wanted to provide some background. We had received just over $6 million of ARPA funds. Of that, Council allocated 50% to community projects in accordance with the community response and input using ARPA funds in Hutchinson and Reno County report. Of that 50%, they allocated $591,281.54 to the EcoDevo and Small Business Assistance. We then hired iParametrics as a consultant to help us distribute these funds. We've already allocated the economic development and workforce part of this grant. So our process for the small business was to hold discussions with community stakeholders. As I've mentioned, we've already allocated the $394,000 of the workforce development. And so this process was to allocate the small business portion of that. We posted the NOFA on January 9th. We held a grant workshop for Q&As on the 27th, and then March 3rd was the submission due date. We then had iParametrics initially rate the applications, and then we had a committee of Rebecca Kiesling, Dave Sotelo, Kendall Francis, Oscar Garcia, Angie Davenport, and Russell Raynert, and myself. We reviewed iParametrics ratings. We went back and forth with iParametrics, so this took a little bit more time. We're a little delayed in presenting these recommendations to you, so I wanted to say thank you to the applicants for being patient in this process. So we then went through their awards and the points they awarded, And we decided that, based on the points, was the fairest way to allocate the assistance. So we looked at the points and the amounts we had and decided that if they received greater than 65 points, they would be funded at 100%. If they rated at 65 points, they would get 75% of their funding. And less than that, there were 3 that were less than that, and we divided the remainder among those 3. So these are the recommendations that we have. I won't read them all because you can see them in your packet. Do you have any questions about these, about the process or the applicants?
I've got a couple of questions. So there's a few of them that rank higher than 65 that did not get fully funded.
Those are because they're limited to 1 year of revenue loss, so we had to consider that. They may have applied for 2 years and we're limited to 1 year.
Okay. And Salt City, the brewery or the title company? Or another Salt City I may not be aware of?
Salt City Brewery.
Just
Sorry, I didn't put that in there.
And how many of these are for economic development, and how many of these are just to repair damage done from COVID?
So these applications, they could apply based on 4 criteria: revenue loss, COVID-19 expenses, so direct expenses, job retention or development, or if they were going to start a new small business. Close-in Compassion is the only one that was a new business. And then we had one, Toy Depot, that was applying for COVID-19 expenses. The rest were either revenue loss or job retention.
What all did they need to share in their application to prove those
They had,
criteria?
if they were applying based on revenue loss, they had to provide 2 years' worth of tax returns. So we did look at those and use those to calculate their revenue loss.
And the amount awarded, is that the full amount that was remaining, or was there a remainder?
That's the full amount within like 50 cents.
Okay. Any other questions on this one?
This was open to absolutely every business under the sun, right?
Yes, any business located in Hutchinson. We did have one applicant who applied that was not within the city limits, and they were disqualified.
Were nonprofits eligible for these funds?
I believe so.
Okay.
I don't know of anything in the application that would have
Excluded them?
excluded.
Did we only have that one applicant that was disqualified?
Yes,
So everyone that applied is basically getting something.
yes.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Clarifications, comments?
I think this looks like a fair and equitable way to distribute the funds.
Okay. I would entertain a motion on this.
I move to approve the grants as recommended.
I'll second.
We have a motion, a second. Any other comments or questions? If not, please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 8C, consider ARPA workforce development recommendations.
Kendall Francis, City Manager. And, I'm not used to speaking, so it takes me a minute to realize I'm the one that's supposed to say something. But so prior to my arrival, the community had been working with several community partners to help address issues around the unhoused population here within the city of Hutchinson. One of those key partners is New Beginnings, and the work that they are doing, one of the pieces of the work that they are doing is a day shelter. Typically, that shelter was only, should really be an evening shelter. People were able to come and access a place to stay overnight and have to leave the next morning. However, earlier this year, their board voted to allocate some additional funding to that program, so to allow it to be open during the day. The last couple of months, as they've went through this process, they've started to see some benefits from being able to stay open the full day. The clients, the people that they serve, have been more integrated into all of the programs that New Beginnings offers, and one of those programs is the workforce. Let me see what. Let me get they call it the Transitional Jobs Program, and as we started talking about these discussions, we were seeing the benefits that this Transitional Jobs Program was having, helping people to find jobs, helping to integrate them into the workforce, and these are jobs across all levels, from entry level to actually higher paying, higher skilled jobs as well. So earlier this year, as part of the ARPA program, we allocated $394,000 to workforce development. We awarded 5 projects. One of those projects was for the Transitional Jobs Program. Out of the $394,000 allocated, we awarded $368,349, which leaves a balance in workforce development of $25,651. As we began to talk with New Beginnings about this program, and they're calling this Noel Lodge. Noel Lodge is their overnight shelter. They're calling this project Noel Daytime. As we started to discuss the benefits that we were seeing in a short amount of time, we realized that we needed to see if there was a way that we could secure additional funding to give this program time to develop and to see if we could see continued benefits from this. It requires $50,000 annually to operate this program, and that's for staff time only. Right now, the project is funded through the end of this month. So we were looking at ways that we could help to fund that gap to be able to keep it open. In my staff memo, I alluded to it as a pilot program. I'm coming before you today to recommend that we use the remaining balance of the ARPA Workforce Development Fund to help fund the Noel Daytime, the part of the funding that they're going to need for the next year. Shara Gonzalez, Operations Director for New Beginnings, is here. She'll be able to speak more intelligently to the program that they offer and the benefits that they are seeing in this short time. So I would ask Shara to come up and
Please come
just
up to the
speak
podium.
you.
Good morning. This has been a surprise to us in the sense of its effectiveness. Opening a day shelter without having night shelter has in other cities created tent cities where they come during the day and have nowhere to stay. So having this at the same place that nighttime is available has given a sense of place and stability. We used to do more of this, but we gave up 36 beds of emergency and transitional housing when we went into and offered that up for the detox and treatment, inpatient treatment facility over here. So we only had one. We used to have 2, so we had 1. So this is allowing that same process that used to work at what we call Meadowlark Commons at 2nd and Walnut, to do a whole daytime program, and the staffing helps people first establish basic resources, which is obviously identification. You can't go to work without it. Sometimes it's stabilizing on medications or healthcare problems. It's a variety of things. And I presented this to our last meeting. When I say it's a surprise, is that the workforce part of it was the piece that was the biggest surprise. At least 2/3 of the people that we serve, and we serve during the day about 25 to 27 people a day. Not all of them are nighttime people. Some of them come in to the day shelter. But we have had people get jobs from Dollar Tree. I'm looking at our transitional jobs program, Hutchinson News, obviously your fast food, McDonald's and Burger King, but also Allied Painting, Kuhn Krause, Hubco, and Jumpstart. So we've been providing a workforce because people now have stability, and from there, then we go to housing, and we are moving people into our housing. We have a housing specialist, and then into other rentals that are available in the community. First, you have to establish the stability. Second, you establish the job, and then the housing, because housing you have to pay for. So it's been very successful to date, and that's just in the first 2 months, those statistics. We are basically looking at covering building costs, utilities, et cetera, ourselves, but the staffing cost was not in our budget this year, and so to continue on, will be about $50,000. And there are also the additional, besides if the city were to grant this money to meet that need, would be United Way. We're looking to United Way for an impact grant, and to the Hutchinson Community Foundation for the remainder, which is about $14,000. That would give us a year to continue to develop this program within our own budget.
Thank you. I would also add that we're going to have some conversations with Shara about how the city might be able to partner with them in their transitional jobs program, especially around our temporary seasonal work, things like that. I mean, this could, in my opinion, could provide a pipeline for some of those sometimes harder to fill jobs, honestly. The seasonal type work is, we have plenty of openings, and it doesn't seem like we always have enough applicants for that.
Right. I would just say that New Beginnings' goal has always been not to just provide a service. You can't service people into something better. You can help them get there. Our goal has always been to bring people fully back into community, and I think that that would be a good partnership in doing that and getting people back to work and able to care for themselves.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Francis or Ms. Gonzalez?
I'm sorry, I don't know what protocol necessarily is. Is there opportunity for other people to speak?
Hold on, sir. There, not really,
Okay.
is there? Would you like to come up to the podium and ask a question on it?
Yeah.
You need to come up to the podium so it's on the public domain.
That's fine.
And please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry.
Yes.
My name is Tyler Vance. I'm the CSS director at Horizons Mental Health Center, and my department basically houses all of our adult outpatient services, so case management, peer support, all of our group services and those kinds of things. And the only thing I want to kind of add is just some of the partnership that Horizons has with New Beginnings by virtue of some of this stuff. And one of those things is that I have an ACT team in my department. The ACT is known as Assertive Community Treatment, and that team is comprised of a therapist, 2 case managers, 2 peer support providers, a med provider, an RN, and really their entire focus is to take the services that we would normally provide to clients that are looking at maintaining in their mental health and really taking those two consumers that are at very high need and very acute situations of potential hospitalization and incarceration and substance use and those kinds of things. And so you can imagine, as I described that population, that's a similar population to what frequents the Noel Lodge. And having Noel Lodge open during the day like this has given my staff a real open opportunity to find people that are often very difficult to find and very difficult to engage. And so our engagement percentages have skyrocketed with that day programming that Noel Lodge is able to provide. And so that's a huge component to that. The second piece, and as it relates to workforce, is that our ACT team also does what we call individual placement and support, which is a evidence-based supported employment program. And so part of being in the ACT program is that we have a IPS specialist on the team whose entire role is to help people get tied to workforce development, placement, resume building, interview skills, all of those kinds of things. And so while it's not directly in conjunction with New Beginnings Transitional Jobs Program, there is a workforce element to that. And so I guess I just wanted to just present very quickly that when we talk about having this programming open during the day, there is a much broader impact and much broader benefit when we talk about other agencies that are utilizing those resources. So I just wanted to share that real quick. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, don't go away just
when
yet.
you're in the corner.
That's where they stick me. So I just want to be clear that this isn't, the request for these funds isn't necessarily that there was a budget shortfall or that you guys did anything to mismanage. It's simply that this is a new program that wasn't accounted for in your budget last year, but obviously, as we can see from his testimony as well, that there will be ripple effects through the community.
Right.
So would you guys be able to come back in a couple of months or I don't know, months or a year and let us know how this has turned out?
Sure, we'd love to. Because actually, this is a response to an issue, a community issue, especially downtown, with people in and out of businesses downtown and in Avenue A Park, because they had nowhere else to go. So yes, this is a new program responding to basically a request from the community. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, yeah, and I would love to see, I know that Hutch has a strong nonprofit community, and I would love to see what you guys do to pick up the remainder of the funds that you guys are in need of.
All right,
So,
thank you.
Thank you.
And before you walk away, I'm sorry. Does anyone else have any other questions for Ms. Gonzalez? No, I suppose you.
Well, this is just a request and a recommendation from our city manager to use the rest of this specific allocation of funds and basically to, in this is a one-time instance to.
Right.
And we have these funds remaining that need to be allocated for something along these lines, and this is his recommendation. Is that, I mean, that's.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate, yeah.
It's just a small experiment that they've taken on themselves through the winter, and we seem to be seeing more benefits other than less homeless in Avenue A Park. We've had a very mild winter. I'm seeing less. There's still a few folks living under bridges and whatnot, but hopefully we can address that soon. But I'm very comfortable with this small experiment. I think there's much more benefit than we might know. So I certainly am for this. I appreciate you finding a little bit of money in the budget.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Garza?
No, I think it's great.
All right.
I think it's great.
I would entertain a motion on this then.
I move to approve allocating the remaining $25,651 in ARPA Workforce Development Funds to New Beginnings Noel Daytime Project.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? If not, please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Fast.
Yes.
Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Next item, please.
Item 8D, consider real estate contract for property at South Walnut and East Avenue D.
Paul Brown, City Attorney. Have you look at the little diagram on the monitors first. You see that kind of a green-blue rectangle. That's the tract that we're talking about, the piece of land. It is directly to the north of the Avenue E Fire Station. The idea is to acquire that so that the fire apparatus can drive directly into the fire station, and then when they're leaving the station, they go straight to the south onto Avenue E. That would bring it into compliance with the design of our other fire stations. We started to do this back in 2017, and we did a Phase 1 environmental audit. It recommended a further examination, and we're following, and I left a copy of it with the memo of the city's policy, city council policy on environmental assessment of real estate that the city acquires. And there was recommended a further environmental assessment of that property beyond the Phase 1 audit. Much of the Phase 1 audit is just review of documentation. When you go further than that, they take actual core samples of testing, which is what is recommended. At the time, through no fault of the Jarretts, who are donating this tract, the city did not want to pay for additional testing. Since then, Chief Beer has become fire chief, and he wants that tract. And is willing to pay for the cost of the further environmental testing. Off the top of my head, I recall it's about $7,100. Fire department will handle those costs to do the further testing and hopefully to clear the tract. Plan is to pave it, and so that the fire apparatus can get in the north side of the fire station. The Jarretts are agreeable to that. We will take care of the other costs associated with the transaction. Not a great deal of cost because it's being donated to us. Closing costs, title search, and that's primarily it. So that's the contract before you, and any questions that you might have.
How much will it cost to pave it?
That I don't know.
If the tests come back that they're contaminated, then I was reading something about in something else with the airport or something, that the cost of remediation. So if all we're doing is paving it and turning it into a driveway, essentially, would it still require remediation?
Not necessarily. And the other thing that I will be looking at closely and have Terracon will be doing the environmental assessment is, okay, if there is some type of contamination there, our fire station is directly adjacent to it. Do we have the same contamination on our fire station property already? And you're right about paving it, that it doesn't really disturb the soil or anything else if there's something underneath there. So that may be a possibility even if they do find something. The type of thing you really want to make sure is there's not some underground fuel tank that nobody knows anything about, that kind of thing. Most of the items mentioned in the original Phase 1 audit were historical in nature, from items that were around that property, mainly, and you can see the railroad tracks to the north, and some of the operations that were there. There's been grain storage facilities close to there, but from long ago. So I'm very hopeful and fairly optimistic that we'll get a good report on the property.
Will they use it for I see the cars on the side there being parked. Will they use that big when it gets paid for more parking for the fire? Or? Good.
There's plenty of room to do that.
But you said our current situation is we're out of compliance due to the ability for the apparatus to pull around into the building.
Right. You can see that when they're pulling in, they've paved the alley to the north of the station there, and that's where they're coming in. I doubt that they're even coming in. They're probably backing into the station. And I can tell you from old number 1 down here on Avenue B, I've been here long enough where we've
I'm the head risk management, so we see the claims of the city, and we've damaged fire trucks, and we've taken out garage doors, and so being able to drive directly in is a great advantage, and the fire apparatus themselves are quite costly, and we do our best to protect those.
So there's doors back there behind the station,
Yes.
right, already?
Right.
And they won't be backing in off East Street anymore, right?
No.
They'll be coming to the back.
They can come right down D and drive right in. And it's being donated.
And it's being donated. Any other questions for Mr. Brown? If the phase 2 comes back with any, are we going to go after a liability release with KDHE?
I don't know about all those things. It depends on what the report says. But possibly, again, if we're just paving it, I think that leaves several options open.
Any other questions for Mr. Brown? Oh, sorry. I would entertain a motion on this.
I move to approve the real estate contract between David and Mary Jarrett and the City of Hutchinson and authorize the mayor to sign the contract and all related documents to complete the real estate transaction.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? If not, please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Next item, please.
Item 8E, presentation of the Hutchinson Regional Airport Business and Organizational Management Plan.
It's kind of hard to ignore the gang from the airport that walked in a little bit ago and sat in the front row. Kind of intimidating.
Good morning, Council. Peter Miller, Airport Manager. And let me start off by saying I've been fighting asthma and some stuff blowing around here the last few days. So I'm going to make my little part of this pretty quick because I'm going to lose my voice in probably about 200 or 300 words. So I'll go real quick here. And I would also thank you, Hutchinson Airport, tenants, aircraft owners, AOPA, business owners for showing up. There wasn't anybody here at first. I was like, man, I guess we're going to be on our own. But no, they must have been waiting in the back. So thank you very much for the support. I do appreciate it. So quick background. Back in 2014, I attended a airport business meeting in Kansas City where they had several consultants that were speaking about the importance of airport business plans. Airports have what are called master plans, which are funded by the FAA to kind of determine where the FAA and where the airports think they're going to be in 5, 10, 15, and 20 years. And that's pretty good information, but it doesn't exactly tell you how to get to that point. So it included a lot of different, projections for traffic, business projections, what we need to do for pavements and things like that. The class that we took was the importance of an airport business plan and how those steps in that plan can help you realize the full potential of that master plan. So in 2015, I began including that in the CIP budget request, and in 2022, we got it. So it was pretty big deal for me. It was one of my items that I thought this airport needed when I was hired on back in 2010, and so I'm pretty excited that we've gotten to this point. So we issued the request for proposals back in July of 2022, and we had some applicants from statements of qualifications of who could help us develop this plan. We included some specifications on those plans of some of the specific things that we wanted this plan to address. And in August of 2022, we contracted with Ron Price of QED Consulting. We formed a steering committee to help develop the plan and help Ron learn a little bit more about the Hutchinson Airport. That committee was made up of city council members, airport advisory committee members, airfield tenants, the Chamber of Commerce, and it also included some input from the Greater Wichita Economic Development Group that specializes in trying to develop on airports and different aviation type businesses. So we met in person several times over the last 6 or 8 months. We also had quite a few virtual meetings, and we had a lot of follow-up meetings and phone calls based on those meetings as well as we developed this plan. Ron helped us put together kind of some of the following items here, including runway facility usage,
specifically the future of runway 422, our third runway that we have out there. He helped us determine what our niche market should be, basically who we should be marketing to, what type of traffic we should be trying to bring in, and what type of services we can offer that traffic. Lots and lots of options of various aeronautical and non-aeronautical land use and development, and some just general airport marketing approaches, some different things that we had never thought about and kind of what other places are doing, and give us some steps on how to kind of better capitalize on all that stuff. Part of the plan was also to look at the airport's organizational structure, both within the airport itself as well as where the airport sits within the city as far as different departments, and make some recommendations, some comparisons, how do other people do it, what works, what doesn't, things like that. So Ron will go into quite a bit more detail. He's got a slideshow here for you about these different aspects of this plan, and you guys should have a copy of the plan in there. I also have printed copies if anybody'd like a printed copy of the plan as well. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ron Price from QED.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning, Council. My pleasure to be here. Glad to see you all. Pilots? Great. So let's talk about this plan that we've been working on, and let me get to the right. Wait a second. Why isn't this moving one slide?
It lost its focus. I'll fix that really fast. Yeah, there you go.
It's going to work. Okay. All right, I'm going to do it this way. So we had the introduction. This is the agenda for our discussion this morning. We're going to talk about runway 422. You'll see some slides about that in just a moment. Peter mentioned niche market opportunities. This is where you really have opportunity to use some of the land that you have at the airport for other purposes. We'll talk about the airport management and organizational functional aspects of the airport to help you develop those issues and address them. And then it's open discussion, which I should say, if you do want to ask a question as I'm going along, just ask, okay? Kind of informal. So here's an aerial view of your airport, and just going to point out a few features. You have about 1,600 acres of total property, and you have 3 runways, which is quite unusual in the airport business today. You have a long runway, runway 1331. It's 7,003 feet long. Has an instrument approach on it that brings airplanes in marginal weather conditions down to 200-foot ceiling, 1/2 mile visibility. Probably some of the best that you can get in the country. You have a second runway that is 1735, oriented north-south. That's 4,012 feet long. It also has an instrument approach, but not to the same approach minimums as runway 13 on the 1331 runway. And you have that third runway, 422, which is the second longest runway at the airport. That's 4,405 feet long.
Now, I have a question. So,
yes.
I'm new at this, and I don't know anything about it. Okay, so
You and me both.
so the Mr. Miller took us out for a little tour and so forth, and referred to the fact that there was VOR and two other things of instrument approach on this runway 22 that were important. I'm just trying to learn and understand. Why is that specific to only runway 22 and not available to put on 13 and 17, or is it? I don't even know.
All right, we'll try to get into a little bit of aviation flight. The VOR is a very high frequency omnidirectional range facility. Okay, puts out radio beams. It's not at the airport. It's located miles away. It happens that there's a radial from that VOR that lines up with runway 422. And for that reason, aircraft can follow, or pilots will follow that radial to get them to the runway end.
Okay, he explained that, and I didn't. I forgot that's what.
Now,
that was.
the ILS instrument landing system, that's a physical facility right at the airport, and it puts out a beam right along the center line of runway 1331. So you, as a pilot, you're getting this left and right deviation correction for getting to the center of the runway, and it's also putting out a profile, a glide slope for you to follow. So you just keep your instruments centered up and you'll be okay, and you'll land appropriately.
Now, and I know you have a long presentation here. I'm just, these were things I was trying to, when I read all this earlier, trying to absorb. So apparently there's only like 3% or something of the flights that need separate, or the conditions, the wind conditions and so forth. But how many of these VOR and all, do we actually have? It was said that some of the training is so important for this runway 22 to outside military, maybe, et cetera. We're wanting some of this training using that. And how much is that? I mean, is that a lot?
Unfortunately, I don't have the statistics. There is data on how many instrument approaches are conducted at the airport. I don't know that number offhand, but it's a safety feature, and pilots like to use it. And for training, I learned first on a VOR approach. So it's a basic facility. And it does offer training for military as well as civilians. And it's not the only airport in the area that has that VOR approach. There's others that have approaches based on that same VOR. But it's a valuable asset, and it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. And it's not on the FAA, is actually in a program to decommission VORs across the country, and this is not on that list. So they see the value in maintaining it as well.
But they were not willing to pay to keep the runway.
Oh, that's another issue.
Yes, okay.
Okay, the VOR serves a lot of people, and it's used for en route navigation as well, so it's not just for the airport. The airport happens to be a beneficiary of its existence. You happen to have a runway lined up with it. We can get into more details. Okay. What is interesting to know is even though you have a runway that's 7,003 feet long, runway 1735, the north-south runway, the shortest of the three, is the most actively used runway at the airport, primarily because of winds, and also because all of the terminal facilities are right there. Hangars, aprons, so it's very convenient to pop off 1735. Let's talk a little bit about runway 422, which was sort of like an ancillary part of this project. FAA guidance has been for almost forever that the primary runway should provide at least 95% crosswind coverage. Crosswind is 90 degrees to the runway heading. They want the runway to be able to pick up 95% of those winds for light aircraft operating when the wind is 10.5 knots or 12 miles per hour. Okay? You're primarily serving light aircraft, so we use that 10.5 knot as a criterion. When you look at all three runways at the airport, you have just about 100% wind coverage, 99.9, something like that. Runway 1735 alone provides almost 95% wind coverage. When you look at which two runway combinations work best, runway 1331 and runway 1735 provide about 98% wind coverage. So what's left over could be assigned to runway 422, which is about 1.6%. Now that's just based on winds, okay? So it's just not necessarily how it's used. It's based on winds. But as you mentioned, it does offer some operational capability. It has that VOR approach for training, as well as just coming on in without having to use the ILS, for example, and deviating from your flight route. It's also the second longest runway on the airport. But the pavement is failing. Maybe 3 years or so, that runway is going to have to close it just because it's not safe to use. So what are we going to do about it? There may not be funds from the federal government to rehabilitate it as they have in the past. So these are the options. The city can rehabilitate it fully, or it could decide to reduce its width. It's 100 feet wide now, it doesn't need to be 100 feet, could be less, based on standards. There's other ways. You could just reconstruct other portions of the runway, the keel portion, for example. These are engineering issues that I think you're going to be looking into down the road. I suggested early on that we try to, I call it save the runway, by introducing a green pavement test case process. Bring it to the FAA and say, look, let's try to find a green way to repave and save this runway. Let it be a test. FAA is very open to trying to make their airport facilities, or the nation's airport facilities, green. Why not try to figure out a way to make green pavements? As it turns out, concrete is a very efficient way of doing it. It absorbs carbon dioxide. I didn't know that. I learned that part of this process. The American Concrete Pavement Association, we reached out to them. They're interested in perhaps pursuing this as a test project, and they do this with the FAA on other things. So that's an avenue. We've opened the door. Now it's an opportunity for Peter and the council and others to decide, shall we pursue it? So you have options with 422 if you want to keep it open. I know the pilots are going to want to keep it open. A pilot myself, I'd like to keep it open. But everything costs money. So you have to think about those things. But let's move on to the land issue. As I mentioned, we've got 1,600 acres, and the airport has a lot of valuable assets. It has a 7,003-foot runway. It's the longest runway in the area, as opposed to Eisenhower, Wichita. We have excellent, or I should say you have excellent all-weather capability here at this airport, with minimums down to 200-foot ceiling and a half-mile visibility. It's comparable to Wichita. None of the other airports around here have that. You have an air traffic control tower that's open during the busy periods of the day. And you have large areas of undeveloped land available for other uses. I'm estimating 200 to 250 acres. What are you going to do with that land? You have a master plan that shows how to develop the airport in terms of aeronautical facilities, but there's a lot of, well, let me go back one slide. But there's also opportunity to do other things. All those areas in green that are shown there are open for development. None of them really impede airport operations. Some of them are ideally suited for the airport. All that land along Airport Road here is a great location for aeronautical uses. Other land areas here or here, to some extent here.
What would you do with that land right there? I mean, where you got your pointer?
I'm going to show you.
Okay.
Hang in there. Let's look at some uses. First, what we did first was we looked to see where are there deficiencies in aeronautical services today in the area. And when you look at what the other airports are able to offer, you find that there are some deficiencies, and these are the niche, what I call the niche market opportunities that you have available. First, and not in any order of priority, is just aircraft maintenance. You have operators at the airport today that maintain aircraft, but they maintain specific models. What about all the other types of aircraft that are flying around today? There's nobody here at the airport to manage or to facilitate their service and maintenance. It opens the opportunity for another fixed base operator or just an aircraft maintenance operator to come out on the field and service all those other types of aircraft. Another opportunity that is somewhat deficient in the area is avionics sales and repair. These are the instruments in the cockpit. Specialized work, and there's a opportunity there because it's not well-served in the area to begin with. We have Eisenhower, but they're Textron, and they're going to be handling certain things of their own. So this is just a niche market that isn't being well-served in the area totally, in my view. Another one is aircraft painting and refurbishment. It's limited as well in the Wichita region. It's a specialized facility. You need to have special air handling equipment because you're dealing with interesting substances, right? Paint, flammables. But it's not being done. At Eisenhower, you can get that service, but they're focusing on big planes. There's one thing you need to remember about aviation. We have planes in this country that are flying around that are older than all of us. An aircraft has to be maintained by federal regulations in order to be airworthy. It's based on time on the ground and time in the air. So planes need to always be maintained. That's why we have them around for so long. Pilots come and go. The plane hangs around forever almost. So painting and refurbishment as aircraft change hands, new paint schemes, new interiors. This is ongoing work. And it's not well done. Well, there are not that many people or businesses in this area that are doing that for the small planes. The third one, or fourth one, is aircraft maintenance, repair, and overhaul. When you hear that term MRO, maintenance, repair, and overhaul, most people think about the large air carrier aircraft. United Airlines, American Airlines, they do their own. They have facilities specifically for their own aircraft. It's not necessarily the same for the smaller field, smaller aircraft operators. There's a strong local talent pool in the Wichita area. This is the air capital of the world. That's how it's promoted. There's a lot of people living in this area that know aircraft. Most of them who work at Wichita might very well live in Hutchinson, for all I know. I mean, it's not that far away, right? So there's an opportunity there for aircraft maintenance repair, also, and particularly for regional airlines. The regional airlines don't do their own maintenance, repair, and overhaul. They farm it out to other companies. You may find that as an opportunity here. I put in the picture here of a helicopter. Most people don't think about helicopter MRO, but that's a big market as well. We'll talk about how we get there, but I'm just pointing out some of the niches that are there. What's also great about MRO is that the aircraft come in light and they leave light, meaning they're not carrying passengers, they're not carrying cargo. They're just bringing the plane in with a crew, bring the plane here, probably drive down to Eisenhower and get out to whatever. But the planes are light, so the pavement strength is not as much of an issue as it is for regular operations. All of this fits so well with your airport, with the 7,000-foot runway. You can bring in 757s, 777s, they'll land here. And you've got that Category 1 ILS, so they can get here when they need to, and when they want to. Another opportunity you have available are aircraft parts and logistics centers. Think about it, you're in the middle of the country. Some of these parts and centers are not located in the center of the country. They're in Chicago, but some of the key ones are out in California. You have a great logistics center opportunity here to handle that type of market. So I think your geography works toward finding companies that want to expand their geographic reach and be able to serve their clients better by having a logistics center here at the airport. These two slides talk about hangars. I work at airports all across the country. Everywhere I go, it's the same comment. We have a wait list on hangars. We don't have enough hangar space. Aircraft are expensive. You leave it out in the sun too long, you have a problem with your avionics, you'll have to talk to your avionics guy. They need shelter. Hangars are expensive. That's been part of the hurdle in getting them built. But there are private companies that'll move forward and build hangars for you if you give them a long enough term lease so they can amortize their investment. I'll tell you about an airport in Connecticut that I worked on for a few years back. They have 2 hangars there that store aircraft. Each hangar, the value of the aircraft in each of those hangars is over $1 billion. All these planes do is hangar there. This happens to be in Connecticut. And then they fly out to White Plains, Westchester County, Teterboro. That's where they pick up their passengers. But the planes are based in Waterbury, Oxford. And what's it, Clay Lacey, right? Lacey Aviation? He's building the 3rd one. Well, he'll be the 3rd one. Anyway, it's a market. Hangar development is a market, and more tenants at the field create more opportunities for the businesses on the field to serve them. So there's a little bit of a ripple effect there. Here's an interesting new one. Unmanned aviation, unmanned aerial systems. Part of what you may hear, advanced air mobility, AAM. If you read the trade journals, you'll hear more about this. These are the drones, these are the electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles that are being developed today. It's an emerging market. As it turns out, K-State is very active in the drone business. They're training people at their campus. We've reached out to them to see if they might be interested in having a branch operation here at Hutch. You've got the land for it. You've got an air traffic control tower to monitor things. They could learn to fly drones right here at Hutchinson. And it's great employment opportunities as well when you have that capability. These are bombers for wildfire control. Did you know that the southern central part of Kansas has the greatest number of wildfires in the state? They're focused down here. Why not have a bomber station here? You've got the runway for it. You even have a bomber based here, privately owned. And I understand there's another one coming. This is a great tenant. You buy a lot of fuel, and they're providing a great public service. Why not have them on the field where they're close to where the fires are? I'm not done, there's more. In the report, I talk about a convention center. This was before I knew that. I think you're in the throes now of building a convention center, but I didn't know that at the time. But airports themselves are a great place for conventions. A lot of pilot groups, aircraft owner groups meet at airports. They all fly their same airplane in there, just like you see guys and gals who drive Porsches come to Porsche meetings, right? It's the same thing with airplanes. You've even had them in the past. But why not build a facility that caters to that? People can fly into Hutchinson, taxi up to the convention center, have a meeting. You've got great hotel facilities in the area. It's a wonderful opportunity for some of the space that you have available. And the last one I'll talk about are solar farms. This is gaining major use at airports today. Airports around the country, most of them have a lot of land that they're not using. And they're restricted because of height limitations, because of the runways and the aircraft that use them. Some of the largest solar farms in the country are at airports. Glare and glint has been shown not to be an issue, as long as they're properly sited. And it's working like a gem. You'll get money for leasing out the land. You're providing energy to the users on the airport. You're selling that excess electricity and power, putting it into the grid. It's a wonderful opportunity for solar farms. And there are developers out there that will jump in and do that. Evergy's got, their program for renewable energies is to be 19, I think it's 19% down the road in renewables. Give them the opportunity to put a solar farm here, and you're close to the grid. The last mile is very important. So how do we get there? These are some of the opportunities that I've observed, and I think that could be pursued, but how are you going to pursue them? So I've outlined here a short-term action program. The first really deals with, other than placing ads in magazines and trade magazines, which is frequent, you'll see, got a hanger for a lease or whatever, getting your name out there in the public, in the aviation public, that you are open for business for aviation use. But at the same time, you could be issuing requests for information. This is not a request for proposal or request for qualifications. It's for, we want to hear from you, industry. We're here, we're available, we're open. What would you do if you could get some land at this airport to develop your business, whatever it might be? So the RFI lets you sort of get an indication of what the market thinks they could do at your airport. My ideas are my ideas, but there are other people out there that have ideas as well, but you got to find them. Let them know that you're open for business, and let them tell you what they need. They can also tell you what their expectations of the city will be if we come, what type of lease terms and conditions they would like to see, so that you don't box yourself in with a request for a proposal that limits their response. Learn from the marketplace. What's available? Who's interested? Cater to that. What incentives would they want? It's usually a big issue. You might also, in the short term, do a site development plan. Get something that's shovel-ready. You've already started that along Airport Road. We have a plan there, basic plan of, it's mostly drainage, I think, related. Okay, develop it further. Say, hey, we've got a site that's ready to go. We've put in the utilities, we put in this, shovel ready. Developers aren't looking for a project 5 years down the road. They're interested now. They're not interested down the road. There are other places they could go if they want to go right away. You have to be ready. One of the things you can do is build a spec hangar. As I mentioned, aircraft like to be sheltered. A spec hangar is not necessarily for based aircraft, although it could be, but for the pilots that come in overnight with expensive airplanes, any kind of airplane, want to hangar it for the night. Where are they going to put it? Sometimes they can go into a based aircraft owner's hangar because he's away. We happen to have the key, put him in there for a while. But a spec hangar is a definite, we're here to serve you, Mr. Transient User, and provide you shelter for your aircraft and a service. And over time, that spec hangar could actually be leased out to a business. You're helping develop that business. You should be continuing some discussions with the Forest Service, the wildfire business, K-State, and Evergy. See if you can't get them to think about a solar farm. And the last part of a short term, and this may be a little touchy, is rebranding the airport. I mean, Hutchinson Regional Airport, if you live in Hutchinson, you know about the airport. If you live in Kansas, you might know about where Hutchinson is. But people outside don't know where Hutchinson is. A lot of airports are rebranding their name to a location. I can give you some examples. We can talk about that later. But the point is that you need to let people from the outside know where you are. Hutchinson Regional Airport, you got a great city. It's wonderful where you live, all of that. But the guy in, Minnesota, he doesn't know Hutchinson, Kansas. If you Google Hutchinson, Kansas, or just city of Hutchinson, who comes up first in the Google search? I don't think it's Kansas. You need to let them know that there are people, that you exist and where you are. And I know it's a touchy thing, because you may be giving up the name Hutchinson, but you need a logo that emphasizes aviation, I think. You have a city logo, it's nice, but not aviation related. How about a specific logo for the airport? It's all in marketing. So, longer term action program. Well, you can be building on what you get back from the RFI process. That'll help you develop some financial incentives program. You probably have one in place already for businesses that want to locate downtown or in the area, but not necessarily suitable for the airport. Streamline your environmental and permitting process to the extent that you can. There's a lot of regulations at the airport anyway that you have to follow, but if you can streamline them, it makes it easier for developers to come in and make a business. You probably have some of that in place already for your other things, but I'd like to focus it on the airport specifically because there are special environmental regulations that apply at airports. Show a willingness to participate in public-private partnerships. And look out for state and federal grants that can help you get the land developed in advance. There are programs. You just have to find them. But who's going to do all this work? This is where we move into the airport management and organizational structure. We did a review of airports around the country that had similar physical characteristics and services and capabilities. And the key takeaway from that evaluation really was that these airports are getting revenue from land that they don't need for aviation use. In some cases, it's more than enough to cover the subsidy that the local government is paying to maintain that airport and operate it. Your airport loses $250,000 a year. You could easily make that up with a few developable land sites. It's got to be worked on. You've got to find the time to do it. And that's the issue. You have an airport staff that's small in size. It's adequate for what it's doing, but it needs, if you really want to see the full potential of the airport, you got to devote more time, or they have to be able to devote more of their time to those types of things. The airport isn't just keeping the runways clear of snow and ice and mowing the grass, you know, that could take up all of your day, and it does, pretty much, for the staff today, maintaining the facilities. I think that in order to move the airport further, we need to escalate its importance as viewed by the city and as viewed by outsiders. Right now, it's a division within the Parks and help me out. Parks and Facilities Department. I think it could be its own department. And I think the aviation director would be a better title than airport manager. It's all perception. You're dealing with people on the outside. They want to see that you as a city are committed to the airport. You see its value. You're giving it a high status within your government organization. You've assigned a person who has an attractive title to handle marketing that airport and getting support from other city departments and working with Greater Wichita Area Partnership, for example. But it's perception that's most important to the outsiders. Where does this airport fit in the community? Is it a standby thing, just, you know, place for local pilots to bore holes in the sky, or is it really important to this community? You've got a tremendous asset here, and it's been underutilized. That's my view. And how do you do that? Well, if you have a person that's going to spend more time, the aviation director, more time in looking at the longer range issues, that person needs support to do the day-to-day issues, because you've got to have the airport operating. So hire an airport manager to manage the day-to-day affairs and manage the staff that's there. Let the aviation director think what's going to happen 3 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, instead of worrying about the hinge on the door over here is falling off or something. You know, it's just, there's this, it's importance. I think you might also want to entertain Reno County. Get them involved with the airport financially. They're benefiting from this airport. They know it, but they're not contributing a nickel that I'm aware of. Why not? You might offer them a seat on the Airport Advisory Committee. Let them have a say, so to speak, in what's going on at the airport. They don't have to have a vote in terms of making decisions, but they can be a party to the process. I'll conclude with these comments. Your airport is underutilized. You've got an asset there, you got land there, that's just sitting there, not even being farmed. You have land area that can be developed for aeronautical uses, because some of those niche markets need to have access to the air side. Some don't. And there's a number of niche markets out there that you could pursue. Pick one or two, go after them. Do the RFIs. See what other people will tell you what they think they could do at your airport. The airport is an economic generator. KDOT did a study that says $18 million a year contributes to this economy, local economy, as a result of this airport. It's a big number. It's probably the biggest one in the city, other than maybe public, the water and sewer. But that's a necessity you have to provide, So the airport is a luxury in a way. It's pumping out $18 million a year, and you're losing $250,000 a year. Take some of that $18 million, throw it back in the airport. Get some people out there to do the job to develop your asset. It's just sitting there, not doing much. And you do that by reorganization. Elevate the value, elevate the airport's perception by others. How they view the airport in your community, how you value your airport, and demonstrate that to the outside world. Otherwise, it's going to be a little more difficult for you to proceed. And making that investment is going to make more return for you. So you have $18 million economic value. It's costing you $250,000 a year. Throw in some more money, and you'll get more than $18 million a year. And you get the right people to do it, that have a passion and understand the market, and you can take this airport and do something with it. I understand anecdotally that Eisenhower's running out of space. Where are they going to go? They could come here. You got the runway, you got the ILS, you got the land. Make a commitment. Move forward. I sometimes can be rather blunt, but that's me. So thank you, and I want to thank you for letting me have this opportunity to work for the city. It's been a pleasure working with Peter and the steering committee. We've had some good discussions, and I hope that this is a plan that you can take action on and move forward with, and I'm not running away. If you need help, I'm here.
Thank you, Mr. Price.
You bet.
That was quite a bit to take in. Any first reactions, comments, and questions from Mr. Price?
I got a question. I was an employee of the city of Hutchinson for 30-some years. I was under the impression that you can't build anything in an airport because they can't have planes fly over it, and that's why they bought all the houses by the airport, because there was a rule or a law or something that you couldn't have no houses or any industrial under an airport. Is that changed, or is that wrong?
No, well, zoning is your issue, I mean, if you put housing in the approach path to airports, you're going to have a problem down the road. So I wouldn't recommend that, and a lot of airports have run into that problem. But that's a local issue. But we do want to keep the approach paths to the airport runways clear. That's what those yellow areas are.
Uh-huh.
And they extend further out as well, but that's the runway protection zone.
Mm-hmm.
In the military, they're called accident potential zones, just so you know. All this green area here, all this land here, all this land here, even this little pocket of land, this sliver is great for aviation-related development here. You could put a warehouse there, you know, I mean, you want to protect the approaches, and you want to have compatible land uses. I mean, I wouldn't make this residential, okay? Not a good idea. This is, and in the plan, I didn't put it in these slides, but in the plan, there's some specific places that I've mentioned. This is a good this is a good zone for this, good zone for that.
It's just where you put them at. You just can't put the houses or anything under the approaches, correct?
You don't want to put anything under the approaches.
Okay.
That's a no-no.
Okay.
And if you did, you'd hear from the FAA. You won't get any more grants. They're not obligated to give you any money, you know. Just $150,000 a year. That's
Well,
all.
you straightened me out. I thought all those years that you just couldn't put nothing in the open areas at all.
Well, keep thinking that, but we don't want them in the approaches,
Okay.
in these yellow areas, for sure. Green, no problem, as long as they're not skyscrapers, okay? Remember, you know, an air traffic control tower is pretty tall, yet it's right there on the airport. There's
Right.
places to put them where it's safe.
I have a question.
Sure.
That, so the green part up at the top, which I believe is 23rd Street, is that dark line up there. What is that like unusable space right here?
Well, that's
Is that
not,
unusable, like, because it's graded? I know there's a
no,
hill out
it's
there.
not airport property.
It's not, okay.
Yeah, there's the blue dotted line here.
That's
That's your airport property.
Okay.
Doesn't mean you can't develop it for something related
Right.
to the airport, you know, just expand the airport property line.
So I was looking at page 16 versus page 18, and it seems like whether or not runway 422 is open or closed, that the recommendations, the recommendations are the same.
They're just about the same. I mean, if you kept runway 422 just as a paved surface, it would allow aircraft access to these areas here for aeronautical uses.
Okay.
So it could be just made, you know, much like a taxiway instead of a runway. That'd be less expensive. You gotta, this 422 is an issue. I know, that's why the pilots are here, I'm sure. There's a great demand to keep it, but there's also the cost to keep it. You've got to weigh those options. Look at the alternatives that I mentioned, ways to keep it.
And keeping it as a taxiway and not a runway would
Well,
be
you
a
keep,
lesser
well,
cost.
ideally, you'd like to keep it as a runway and keep your
Right.
third runway, because you can then taxi, you could land on the runway and just taxi over to whatever's developed over there. But if you wanted to keep aircraft access to those northern areas, then maintaining that as some type of access way would be fine. But you do have parallel taxiway there already. So there's options there. I didn't want to be, I can't be that specific because I don't know exactly what's going to go in. All I know is these are I think I gave you about 10 different things you could do with the land. And then there's the outside world that'll tell you what they think they can do with the land. Find out and move forward. But don't let it sit there. You got to realize you have a tremendous asset here. It's totally underutilized. And half of the flight activity at your airport is touch and go traffic. It's training traffic.
Could you reiterate that again one more time?
About
Severely underutilized.
severely underutilized.
Asset that
It's
our
an asset
city
that's
has.
not being used to its full potential. It's really, airports, other airports would beg to have as much land as you have. They can't.
And maybe you haven't done this, or maybe you did. You mentioned Great Bend in there. I assume that's the Great Bend that is an hour from here. Is that, in this report, there was, I'd never heard of Great Bend as a place, airport. I know that you're,
It's on the west side of town.
They have an airport.
okay,
Yeah.
well,
They have a longer runway
they have
than we
four
have.
different airports they're comparing. this, that, and the other, and Great Bend is one of them, so
I was looking for airports that had 3 runways. You know, there are very, very few airports in the country left with 3 runways in different directions. Most of them are parallels or, you know, triple parallels. Atlanta has 5, okay, all lined up the same way. But try to find an airport with 3 runways in the country, you're going to have a hard time. And I don't even know if Great Bend does have 3 anymore. Some of them all had 3, then they're down to 2, whatever, because they just ran out of the ability to continue to maintain them. That's one of the things that you're facing. And that's how other airports. But the key takeaway from looking at the peer airports was that they use undeveloped land area for revenue production. You have undeveloped land area, but you're not producing any revenue.
my question, bringing up Great Bend and/or Salina. Now, Salina has got a huge airport, or at least I think it's a huge airport. Maybe it's not.
It's all relative.
I know that, pardon?
Well, it's not huge if you're Atlanta, okay.
Well, right. I mean, from little.
I know, we're just joshing here, okay.
Yes. Competitive, and the K-State has their program at Salina. What are the competitive, when you get into the uses of the airport, it does come down to competition I guess we have a real benefit in reality that we're so close to Wichita that there's a lot to be actually gained, and we can talk about what we lose to them, but we actually can gain a lot from them because we're so closer than Salina, closer than Great Bend. But you're implying kind of we can be like a little B type airport, which I don't. That's not a shot. That's a. Do we have a competitive advantage against Great Bend or Salina?
One of your great benefits is that you happen to be near Wichita.
Yes,
and Wichita employs a lot of people in the aviation business.
Yes.
And people in the aviation business like to be around people who are in the aviation business.
Yes.
So if Wichita is losing space for these people, right? Why not take the overflow and bring it here to Hutchinson, okay? But you got to let them know that you're in the business. I'll give you an example. City of Rochester, New York, years back, the home of Bausch & Lomb, the home of Kodak. Where do you think they ship the products that they manufacture out of those plants? How do they get them distributed throughout the world? They truck them to Kennedy. Why? They have a Rochester airport right there that handles big aircraft. But the shipping people in those departments always sent it to Kennedy. You put a truck of stuff down to Kennedy, 20% of it doesn't make it to Kennedy, if you know what I mean, okay? It took them a long time in Rochester to realize that they were missing a cargo opportunity, just because no one thought about it, no one pushed it, no one looked at it. I've talked about, we've mentioned rebranding. I worked at an airport in Western Carolina. It was Anderson County Airport. They lengthened the runway to 5,000 feet to get business traffic, business jets. And they did, because the planes were flying over. But then they realized nobody knew where the airport was. They changed the name, Western Carolina Regional Airport. Now they know, people know where it is. These are the finer points that you have to be looking at. You've got a great asset. You have a talent pool that's in big demand. You might even talk to the colleges around here, see if they'll open up a training center, not just for pilots, but for mechanics. Mm-hmm. It's a great demand in the country, and you know that demand is going to continue.
That's something that we talked about. Stu and I did a tour at the airport and the facilities last week, or I don't even know what day it was. And that was something that we talked about, was kind of getting HCC on board and talking about bringing that program.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I've talked with other colleges, and they said, we don't want to bother with that. We tried it years ago, and nobody would come. And said, well, times are different, but you got to open your eyes. They got to knock on the door. That's why I think this RFI is really a key thing. It's a low-budget item. You put it out once, you get it distributed, and you see what comes back. At least you get your name out there. And go to some trade shows. There's one right now in Atlanta that I was going to go to. I didn't have to come here. It costs $100 to go to the exhibit hall. MRO Americas. All the MRO people are at this conference in Atlanta today and tomorrow. For $100, you can walk the exhibit hall, pass out cards, see who's interested, blah, blah, blah. Pretty good investment. Airfare and a night or two in a hotel, some meals. Just land one client. Quite a return. Anyway, you're not known. You're not known. That's unfortunate. But you could change it. It takes initiative, and it takes a commitment from the city to put the people, give them the time and the resources to do it. And that's lacking. That's lacking in the city. And elevating it for perception purposes is important. Years back, I was told that the airport director for Los Angeles World Airports is the highest paid person in the city. Higher than the mayor, anybody else, highest paid. Think of what that airport and the other airports it has, how that contributes to the economy. They recognize the value.
I can assure you he's getting paid better than the mayor.
Well, I'm sure that, yeah, but it's just an example. I was struck when I heard it. I mean, you never hear that kind of thing, but you go to a conference, you pick up little stuff. So, it just shows the importance that you place on your airport. And by relegating it to a subdivision level and you're just managing day to day, clipping the grass, I mean, a person who's going to come in and spend millions of dollars developing the field wants to know that you're committed to the airport as much as they're going to be committed to the airport. So it's reciprocal. You got to show your hand.
Thank you.
I hope I haven't overstated that, but.
You're good. I think we need to have a meeting of the minds with some of the airport advisory group and the airport stakeholders and kind of disseminate some of this information we got and hear from our different airport stakeholders on their opinions or ideas they have at the local level with how this report was applied and see what we can do for next, make some action items.
Yeah.
So what's the time frame for the meeting you're wanting to have?
Are we calling it a study session?
We call it whatever you want to call it.
Whatever I want to call it. Let's do something late May, June.
I got a question.
Can you come up to the podium if you want to ask a question, please? State your name, please.
I'm just real curious to go through this whole process and being a tenant at the airport for about 22 years. How come the airport people didn't get to put any input into this? Maybe I'm asking the wrong one, but.
That's what I was intending on having this meeting so that there would be input.
But this guy had a lot of good key points for bringing business into town. But I think our walls are busting down right now with local businesses that can't expand. And a lot of people in this community think that the airport is a rich person's place to go, and it's kind of a one percenter, but they don't look at the economics that come back out of it. So if we had more opportunity just for our own people right here in this community, that would be kind of cool.
Well,
and then once we've expelled all that, if we can branch out further, that would even be even better yet.
And that's why I want to have a meeting with everyone at the airport involved so that if there's investment made, what are we doing with what we have now? And can we expand on that easy? Is there low-hanging fruit? And then look at the long term, taking what he's put together and what we already have and having the people that are at the airport drive some of those decisions.
Yeah.
I think that's how we need to handle it from here on out. Which would be the whole gang in the front row here, I'm sure. But that's how I think we need to do it, and I think
Well, and John and Tony, I hope it doesn't take 8 years to get the first actionable item, because it took 8 years, almost 9 years, to get a business plan from the time we decided we wanted to do it to today. I mean, that just speaks how little we think of the airport. And I know that I'm preaching to the choir, and I'm preaching to another guy that cares about the airport. If we could get an actionable item, such as what we're working on with a standardized lease, if Tony, if you want to build a new hangar, here's the lease, you know, here's the incentives that we give you, and go for it. So I know we're trying, I hope we can move this up the priority level, move it up higher than it has been for years.
But the other thing that we always hear too is we can't build buildings for private entities. So don't do that. Build a hangar, put the thing out for, what is it, RFQ, and put it out statewide or nationwide, and let the businesses come sell themselves to that building. And keep going until everybody gets one.
Mm-hmm.
It's already been shown there's plenty of land up there.
Mm-hmm.
Losing 422 would be really bad for the airport because your development's going to go out the window. Well, yeah, there's still plenty you can develop there, but there's a lot more. You could almost do a whole nother study on just that by itself, economical impact. But if the city doesn't ever plan on using that property, then having 422 doesn't really do any good then. So there's got to be if they're going to grow, that needs to stay, and then continue to grow the airport.
and these are the discussions we need to have in a meeting with everyone in the room instead of some people here, some people there, some people, not everyone with the same mindset in the same room. That's my opinion.
Most of these aviation jobs that's coming to this airport are going to be at least $50,000 a year jobs or more. But it seems like there's whoever does this stuff spends more time trying to get coffee in tea houses. That's going to employ part-time people, and it really doesn't do much for the economic impact as to bringing in higher paying jobs where people has a lot more money to spend around the city. And it seems like it'd make more sense to go after bigger development and get away with some of the little small stuff we do. The small stuff will come. You don't have to force it. It'll come on its own. But the airport has always been the gateway into a community. And without that, there's so much lost. And also having a real airport manager on staff would be kind of nice too, because then he can do his own things and make his own decisions. For now, he can do things, come up with plans and all this stuff, but he can be shut out pretty quickly too. He just really has no authority. And Peter's been, in my opinion, probably out of 22 years, the best manager we've had out there, or the best office guy that we've had out there. Numerous times I've seen him pick up the shovel or go get on the tractor or whatever, just to make things happen when he's in need. But I think they also did another study at the airport and determined that we're understaffed and under everything really. But that wasn't brought up in this. Maybe it should have been.
I believe that was in the Reftella study.
What's that?
It was in another study that we did.
It's under a
Before
rug
us,
somewhere.
by the way.
I think when it came out, people didn't like what it said, so they just kind of filed it away in the back of the cabinet. But yeah, it's even in the summertime, it's even worse because when things happen at the airport, it'd be nice to have a little extra help out there. But well, if you take the guys off the mowers and go fix projects, then the grass grows up. Then you get cited by the FAA for encroaching grass onto the runways and taxiways, and that's not a good thing either. But that study should be pulled back out and looked at alongside this business plan here as well.
Yeah, the back 10 pages of that we need to look at, especially during our budgeting session coming up. I think there's a lot of useful information in there. It didn't appear that way at first, but you look at the benchmarking. I think there's a lot of useful information, and I think there's some information in this report that we can use, and I appreciate, John, your path forward. I think that's a start. Hopefully, it doesn't take us 9 years to do the first bullet point.
There's no point in paying for these studies if we're not going to have some action
I
items
would
to
agree.
work on.
I think a study session would be
Thank
a
you very
good
much, Tony.
start.
Thanks,
and
Tony.
Identify the stakeholders and bring everybody to the table and move forward with something within the next 8 years.
Thanks.
Get-
Change that to months.
Get some stuff done. Because we're, like he said, we're sitting on landmine, but we need to find a way to balance the new and shiny stuff with supporting what's already there and the people who've already made the investment in the blood, sweat, and tears.
Mr. Price?
Well, you got a springboard to do something with. I hope you'll move forward and grab some of that low-hanging fruit and then move forward and then get the big grapefruit, whatever. So, watermelons, whatever it might be.
Thank you very
It's been a pleasure working with everybody, so thank you very much for that opportunity.
I appreciate that.
Take care.
Any more thoughts on this?
No, I'll start looking at some possible times. Do you have a preference whether it's during the day or the evening, or?
I would think this would be an evening
Okay.
meeting. Does anyone else have a preference on that?
I don't know, what are the,
Well, I'd imagine an evening meeting would be easier to get to. Let's shoot for an evening meeting, if possible. All right, any other questions or anything on this, everybody? Next item, please.
Item 9, report of city officials.
Ms. Goss, would you start us off today?
I guess so. Over the past 2 weeks, I've attended a handful of community events. Before all our airport guys leave, Stu and I did have a tour at the airport. It was really cool to see such a unique thing happening. The Kansas Forestry Service bomber, I think is what you call it, that's out there, is really cool, and it's amazing to have that here in Hutch. I also attended one of the downtown strategic planning sessions. Olson Studios was in Hutch for a few days last week to discuss the downtown Hutch master plan. I would encourage everybody, if you haven't taken this survey yet, to visit the website downtownhutchmasterplan.com and do so that we can receive input from as many voices as possible. Yesterday I attended a lunch sponsored by the Department of Commerce. We talked about ways to recruit people to Hutch, boomerang residents, new residents, et cetera, and growing the tax base. Two upcoming events. One is actually today at Applebee's. There's a fundraiser. It runs all day at a handful of Applebee's across the state, and this is a fundraiser that goes to support Kansas Honor Flight, which is something near and dear to my heart. And this second event is that there's a highway cleanup Friday night for the young professionals of Reno County, and you can find that information online or on Facebook.
Thank you.
And that's it.
Mr. Conklin?
no, I have nothing to add.
Mr. Fast?
Ditto, Stacy. I don't have anything. I think Bill Self's already started. I asked him to wait, but he's probably done by now. I'm on to you, Garza.
Mr. Garza?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the community of the Pounders. I've been mentioned a couple times, and it's just not me, it's the people that live there. They come to the meetings. I helped them start it, but they're the ones that got things done with me. And Tony Finley, Adam, Mike, and Daryl were here. They're big pushers with me, and without all of us together, we wouldn't have got nothing done. But now we got it going, and we're going to get moving, and you're going to hear a lot from the Founders Association in the southeast part of the town. So it's great, and it's a great feeling.
Use city council.
Excuse me?
Youth City Council.
Yes, sir, right here.
Okay, good.
Youth City Council meeting tonight is at 6:30. Like I said before, I need everybody there. They need the adults. They need the adults there. I mean, they look out there and they see nobody sitting there. What are we doing to our young people? We got to give them encouragement to be part of the government. This is a chance for them to be, they are part of the government. You need to come see our young leaders. We have 7th graders outstanding. We have kids on the city council that's smart, and they want to do things for the city. So come and see them, please. At 6:30 right here, they sit right here where I sit. They're young people that's in our city that are going to be leaders someday. So come and view them, if you would, please. I appreciate it. As far as the APAC, I'm glad to see we're not helping them. The APAC's getting more involved in taking bids here. They're people that live here in Hutchinson. We got to give back to the people that live here, and APAC's one of the companies that people that live here in Hutch. Of course, I know it's a bid process. Years and years and years ago, we used to have a 10% to local businesses, that people within 10% of the bill, 10% of the bid, they would get the money or get the bids. I'd like to see that come back. That way we can help the people that live in Hutchinson, so they don't, like they said, they don't have to drive clear out every morning. They drive out, and the contractors that get the bids, they drive into our city. That's crazy. So we can get some kind of network that we get local business get 10% of the bid. That'd be great. It used to be that way. I don't know why we can't bring it back. And Mr. Peter, I think you're doing a great job at the airport, but one thing I want you to help me do. How come we don't bring the Thunderbirds or the Blue Angels here? Huh?
I would love to bring the Bluebirds, the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels here. You have to book them out 3 or 4 years in advance, and generally they like to go to the great big, kind of the great big shows. So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember
I'll
them
work on
coming
it.
here one time or so. I remember back. I was probably a little kid, but yeah, if we can, I'd like to see that happen.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see what we can do.
And you are doing a great job, sir.
Thank you.
All right. And as far as this presentation, sir, you did a great job. I'm interested in the airport. We already have the property. We have everything here. I like to see us we'll develop it, try to get it going, and place the. I like the electrical part of it. I am an electrician, and we put a farm here. That's great. We can sell it back and make money off that. I do think that's a great idea. So I'm a big opponent on back in the airport to see what we can do. And we need to get Hutchinson moving, and we are in a lot of ways. So, the master plan. I've been involved in the master plan. I've seen the master plan for downtown, and the South Hutch residents there. I need to see you more involved. I need to see you up there involved in this master plan. It's a great plan, but we need to get their voices out there for the south end of town, Morristown, whatever. I need to see more and more residents involved, because this is a great thing. And we'll get things done and we stick together and work together. Other than that, that's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. I actually have an air show poster from the early 90s in Liberal with the Thunderbirds and Otto the Clown helicopter. Maybe Otto would be easier to book these days. As far as the downtown Hutch master plan that everyone's hit on a little bit, I'd like to remind everyone that there's a website, downtownhutchmasterplan.com, and there is still opportunity to share in the online public survey. So if you have an opinion on how to develop downtown, make sure your voice is heard. And there's also a virtual open house open till May 8th on the information that's been provided so far and gathered from the community. But yes, if you want to be involved in the decisions for how you think the vision for downtown would be, I would advise that you get on the website and take the online survey. It's been an interesting discussion. I'm excited to see if we can make some action items happen at the airport. I think it's a very important asset for our community. I think that's been reiterated over and over again ad nauseum. So I will pass it on to Mr. Francis.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Quickly, I just had a note passed to me that said they thought maybe youth council was at 5:30. Is it?
It's at 6:30.
Okay, that's what I thought it was too. But
the youth committee or the adults have to be there at 5:30.
Okay, all right.
But it's at 6:30.
Okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification. just a little bit more on the downtown master plan survey. It closes April 28th. Ms. Goss did give you the website, downtownhutchmasterplan.com. Survey closes the 28th, so you got a little bit of time, but get in there and take that. Just a reminder, Kendall's Coffee, Friday, May 12th, 7:30 to 9 a.m. at Scuttlebutts. Come enjoy a little breakfast on me and have a question and answer session with the city manager. Other than that, I don't have anything. We'll work on getting some dates and times for a work session about the airport.
All right.
We also will be reaching out to you about scheduling a time for proposed joint city-county government meeting. So I'll be reaching out to you in regards to that shortly as well.
All right. Thank you, sir. I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I have a question for Mr. Francis.
Yes.
Can you remind us again about the city cleanup?
Yes. April 29th and 30th, so Saturday and Sunday. And if you go on the website, you'll see or Facebook, you should see a map of where the dumpsters will be located throughout the city. We're asking people to bring those materials to the dumpsters to be dumped for free. There's also a list of what is not eligible to be taken.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Then I would entertain a motion.
I move to close the meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please call roll.
Garza?
Yes.
Conklin?
Yes.
Goss?
Yes.
Fast?
Yes.
Richardson?
Yes. Thank you, everybody.